There's a version of you making decisions every day that you don't fully see. It shows up in who you're drawn to, in what you tolerate, in how you react when things get uncomfortable, in the patterns that keep repeating no matter how many times you tell yourself, "This time will be different." And honestly, most of the time you think those choices are yours. But they're not. They're coming from something older, something deeper, something that formed long before you had the awareness to question it. Your wound is choosing for you. Not in a dramatic, obvious way. Not in a way that feels out of control. It feels natural. It feels familiar. It even feels right sometimes. That's what makes it dangerous. Because when a wound becomes part of your identity, you stop seeing it as something influencing you. You start seeing it as you. And until you separate the two, you will keep making decisions that reinforce the same outcomes. So, if you've ever looked at your life and wondered why the same patterns keep showing up, why you keep ending up in the same situations, feeling the same emotions, dealing with the same types of people, this is where you need to look. Not outside, inside. Your earliest emotional experiences created a blueprint you still follow. Before you had language for it, before you had logic, before you had perspective, you were learning what love felt like, what safety felt like, what connection looked like. And whatever you experienced, your system adapted to it. If love felt inconsistent, you learned to chase it. If attention felt conditional, you learned to earn it. If emotions were ignored, you learned to suppress them. None of this was conscious. It was survival. And those adaptations didn't disappear when you grew up. They became your default. They became the lens through which you interpret people, situations, and yourself. This is why two people can experience the same situation and react completely differently. Because they're not just reacting to the moment, they're reacting to everything that moment represents. To start breaking this pattern, you have to recognize that your reactions are not just about the present. When something triggers you, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? That question connects your current reaction to its origin. And once you see that connection, you create space to respond differently. You don't choose what is healthy, you choose what feels familiar. One of the hardest truths to accept is that you're not naturally drawn to what is good for you. You are drawn to what you recognize. If your emotional baseline was shaped by instability, intensity, or inconsistency, those dynamics will feel normal, even if they hurt. This is why someone can repeatedly end up in relationships that don't meet their needs and still feel a strong pull toward those people. It's not about logic, it's about familiarity. Your wound is looking for something it understands. And often it's not even looking for something new. It's looking for a chance to replay something old and finally get a different outcome. But without awareness, that outcome rarely changes. A practical way to interrupt this is to question your attraction. Not just who you're drawn to, but why. Ask yourself, does this feel calm and stable or intense and unpredictable? Because intensity often feels like connection when you're operating from a wound, but it's not the same thing. Your triggers are revealing what still needs your attention. Most people see their triggers as something to get rid of. They try to control them, suppress them, or avoid situations that bring them up. But your triggers are not the problem. They're information. They show you exactly where your wound is still active. If you feel abandoned quickly, there's likely a part of you tied to loss or inconsistency. If you feel the need to prove yourself constantly, there's a part of you tied to worth and validation. Instead of reacting outward, start observing inward. When you feel triggered, pause and name the emotion clearly. Not "I'm upset," but "I feel rejected" or "I feel overlooked." That level of clarity matters, because it shifts your focus from what's happening outside to what's happening inside. And that's where your influence is. Self-sabotage is often self-protection in disguise. When you look at your behavior from the surface, it can seem like you're just getting in your own way. You avoid opportunities. You pull back when things get serious. You create distance when things start to feel stable. It looks like sabotage, doesn't it? But underneath that, there's usually protection. If success feels unfamiliar, you may avoid it because it challenges your identity. If closeness feels risky, you may create distance to avoid being hurt. Your wound is, well, trying to keep you safe based on what it has learned. The problem is, what it has learned may no longer be accurate. To work with this, you need to identify the function of your behavior. Instead of asking, "Why am I doing this?" ask, "What is this protecting me from?" That question honestly reframes everything. Because once you understand the protection, you can start finding healthier ways to meet that need. You are not reacting to reality, you are reacting to interpretation. One of the most overlooked aspects of this is just how much of your experience is shaped by perception. Two people can hear the same words and feel completely different emotions because, well, they're not responding to the words themselves. They're responding to what those words mean to them, and meaning is shaped by your past. If you've experienced criticism in a certain way, you may interpret neutral feedback as an attack. If you've experienced distance as rejection, you may interpret space as abandonment. Your wound fills in the gaps. To shift this, you need to slow down your interpretation process. When something happens, instead of immediately reacting, ask yourself, what else could this mean? That question creates alternative perspectives, and alternative perspectives reduce emotional intensity because they remind you that your first interpretation isn't the only one. The version of you that formed around your wound is not your true identity. Over time, your adaptations become part of how you see yourself. You might identify as independent, guarded, people-pleasing, or emotionally distant. And while those traits may be accurate, they're not necessarily who you are at your core. They're who you had to become. This is where growth gets uncomfortable, because separating from those traits can feel like losing yourself. If you've always been the one who avoids conflict, speaking up will feel unnatural. If you've always been the one who takes care of others, setting boundaries will feel wrong. But that discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something new. To move through this, you need to create a distinction between who you are and how you adapted. You are not your patterns. You are the awareness that can observe and change them. Healing requires you to respond differently, not just understand more. Awareness is the first step, but it's not the last. You can understand your patterns deeply and still stay stuck in them, because understanding doesn't automatically change behavior. Action does. And action is where things get uncomfortable. It means choosing not to respond the way you always have. It means sitting with emotions instead of escaping them. It means making decisions that don't feel natural yet. This is where most people stop, because it's easier to analyze than it is to act. But real change happens when you apply what you know. even in small ways. If you tend to withdraw, try staying present a little longer. If you tend to overextend, try setting one boundary. You don't have to change everything at once, but you do have to start. You will feel resistance when you start choosing differently. Every time you step outside of your pravichnaya patterns, you will feel it. Doubt, fear, discomfort. That's your system reacting to change. It's trying to pull you back to what it recognizes. The mistake is thinking that resistance means you're on the wrong path. In reality, it often means the opposite. It means you're doing something unfamiliar. And unfamiliar doesn't feel safe at first. To move through this, you need to build tolerance for discomfort. Not eliminate it, not wait for it to go away, but act alongside it. Because waiting to feel ready will keep you in the same place. Your relationships reflect the level of awareness you operate from. The people you choose, the dynamics you engage in, the patterns you repeat, they all reflect your current level of awareness. If your wound is leading, your relationships will reflect that. You may choose people who reinforce your beliefs about yourself. You may stay in situations that match your internal narrative. But as your awareness grows, your choices start to shift. You begin to notice red flags earlier. You become less tolerant of what doesn't align. You start valuing stability over intensity. And that changes everything, because your external reality starts to match your internal state. Not instantly, but gradually. Taking your power back starts with recognizing the pattern. The most important shift in all of this is awareness, not surface-level awareness, but deep, honest recognition. Seeing your patterns clearly, understanding where they come from, noticing how they show up in your life. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you can see it, you have a choice. You can continue letting your wound decide for you, or you can start making decisions from a place of awareness. That doesn't mean you'll get it right every time, but it means you're no longer operating unconsciously. And that's where real change begins. You are not broken, but you are responsible for what you do next. Your wound is not your fault. You didn't choose the experiences that shaped you. You didn't decide how your system adapted to them. But at some point, it becomes your responsibility to address it. Not perfectly, not all at once, but intentionally. Because if you don't, it will continue to shape your life. It will continue to choose for you. And the same patterns will keep repeating. But if you take ownership, if you start paying attention, if you begin making small different choices, something shifts. You move from reacting to responding, from repeating to creating, from being controlled by your past to being guided by your awareness. And that's the difference between staying stuck and actually changing. If this kind of depth is what you're here for, real insight, real understanding, no surface-level noise, then you already know this work isn't easy. But it's worth it. So, if you're serious about breaking these patterns and understanding yourself at a deeper level, make sure you subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because most people never realize what's driving their choices. And even fewer do something about it.